Hello, MennoNerds. It is Will, and I have come to give you permission to exclude people from your communion table. We've had a rich conversation about the Lord's Supper and a larger conversation about the sacraments, ordinances, etc. I resonated with what Paul said about wanting people to feel welcome at the table at his church. In the congregation that I lead, I use similar words. I invite people to come to the table explaining that whoever is seeking to be in right relationship with God is welcome. Now, I do that for a few reasons. I want to make sure that people who are coming from other churches, other denominations, feel welcome at the table. I want to encourage and nurture people who are on spiritual journeys of whatever variety, that this is a place where they are welcome. But I don't do it to be inclusive. I do it so that the decision to exclude is not made by me. It was great to see Ebony back in the loop again, and she sees in the story of the Lord's Supper a model of inclusivity. And I would love to see it that way, but I don't. In fact, I look around the room as painted in the story, and I see a lot of people who have been excluded. If you look around the room, there are no people there who are simply curious. You know, the disciples could have opened the door to the room. They could have called out into the streets to the religious pilgrims who were there, to the people who would chant Jesus' name on Palm Sunday. And they could have said, hey, you know, we have this itinerant preacher who's going around doing miracles and things, and he's doing this supper. He's inviting people to eat with him and impart some words of wisdom. So feel free to come in. That didn't happen. This was not an open meal for the curious onlookers. There were no people there who were easily offended. You know, Jesus could have opened into the meal and said, hey, I've been longing to share this meal with you, but first, just as a heads up, kind of trigger warning, in this meal there's going to be some conversation around breaking down understandings of purity, but also a conversation about blood and death, my impending death, etc. So if any of that makes you uncomfortable, now's the time. You feel free to sort of make your way out. He didn't do that. The people who were easily offended were excluded from that meal. But if we look around the room, we are then called to be inclusive in entirely different ways. If you look around the room, there were people who had their theology wrong. They were invited. The people who had, in many cases, demonstrated that they didn't understand who Jesus was. There were people who, in the coming days, would demonstrate that they didn't understand who Jesus was, that they hadn't been listening to what he was prophesying and saying was going to happen. They were invited. The people who had failed Jesus, the people who had failed to create a safe space for him, the people who were listening and paying attention and understanding, they were there. The people who had failed Jesus and would fail him soon after, they were invited. Even the man who was conspiring to have Jesus killed was invited, and he participated in the meal, drinking condemnation onto himself. You see, the world is full of painful, horrible stories of exclusion, leaving us to wonder and imagine how the church could be different, how the whole world could be different if these people had been included and had their seeking to be in right relationship with God nurtured and honored. But in my tradition, where I come from, the stories, the beautiful stories around the Lord's Supper that I heard were stories of exclusion. You see, there was a clear understanding among my people that if you had burdens, if you were carrying sin that you hadn't resolved, you weren't welcome at the table. And so there are beautiful stories of people approaching other people in line, their friends, their community members that they had wronged, following them, taking them out of the church, apologizing, confessing, seeking to address wrongs that they had committed. And in the space that created, that meal, that exclusive meal, became a better meal, a more nurturing, life-giving meal. And so the challenge to exclude isn't to exclude people who we don't think aren't quite good enough. The people that we need to exclude are ourselves when we have not taken that moment, taken that meal, taken that whole fellowship seriously enough. So go ahead, exclude people from your meal, and it will become more life-giving. Exclude the versions of yourself that diminish the meal, and it will be a better event for everyone involved.